Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into something really cool today. Um, we're taking a look at the Sandman, but we're going even deeper, right?
Yeah, deeper, beyond just the stories.
Exactly. We're going to be looking at some academic analysis of the series, looking at how the Sandman handles some pretty big concepts.
The big stuff, for sure.
Yeah, justice, punishment, and forgiveness. I think those are ideas everyone's wrestled with, you know. And the Sandman really, digs into those.
It doesn't shy away from the tough questions, and that's what makes it so fascinating to analyze.
Definitely. So, okay, obviously, tons of people know the Sandman already.
Right.
But for those who may not have dived in yet, Dream or Morpheus is like the central figure. He's the Lord of Dreams,
Yeah.
right? Super powerful, kind of brooding. What's his deal when it comes to justice, especially in his realm, the dreaming?
Well, there's a lot of academic debate about this, actually. You know how Morpheus embodies justice, especially in the early parts of the Sandman?
Yeah,
You see, he starts off acting on this really strict sense of justice, almost vengeful at times, like an eye for an eye kind of thing.
right. And that totally makes sense, right? He's this ancient, powerful being. You wouldn't expect him to be all warm and fuzzy.
Exactly. But some scholars, they even point to this as the Sandman exploring a more Old Testament idea of right and wrong.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I always think of Not a Story. I mean, she rejects his love, and Morpheus condemns her to hell
Right.
for centuries. It's brutal, even for a cosmic being. I mean, what do you think about this idea of Morpheus being kind of a tyrant, at least at the beginning?
Well, some argue that his early actions, they're driven by personal offense. He's been wrong, so he wants retribution to kind of rebalance things in his eyes.
He's not exactly Mr. Forgiveness.
No, definitely not at first. But you see, the series goes on, and both he and the idea of justice and the Sandman itself, they evolve.
He's not stuck in that, rigid mindset forever. And I guess that's what makes him such a compelling character. So how does his encounter with Rose Walker, the dream vortex, fit into all of this?
Ah, Rose. She's a great example of this evolution. At first, Morpheus thinks, gotta destroy her, she's a threat to the dreaming itself. But then,
Yeah.
he changes course, doesn't take that drastic action, finds a way to spare her life.
Now, some people might say that's just him being practical,
Yeah.
protecting his own interests.
Oh, for sure, some interpretations go that way. But I think it's deeper. It shows a shift in how Morpheus understands justice. He starts thinking about balance, how to keep the dreaming safe, but without unnecessary sacrifice.
He's learning, even though he's this all-powerful being. Okay, so Morpheus changes his approach to justice. But what about punishment itself? The Sandman doesn't hold back on showing us some brutal stuff, so what's the point? Is it all just revenge, or is there something more going on?
See, that's where the Sandman gets so interesting. It makes us ask, what is punishment really for? Is it revenge, making someone suffer because they did wrong? Or is there something else at play? Like maybe it's about rehabilitation, or even deterring others from doing the same bad stuff.
Yeah, and then there's that scene where Lucifer just abandons hell, throws the whole eternal damnation thing right out the window. Is Gaiman saying that even the devil himself thinks punishment is pointless?
Ooh, great question. Some people definitely interpret it that way. It's a commentary on how maybe punishment can just be futile. If the ruler of hell gives up on it, what does that say about our systems of justice here on Earth?
Yeah, makes you think, right? So is it ever truly about helping people change? Or are we sometimes just too quick to say, you're bad and there's no hope for you?
Tough questions, right?
Right.
And the Sandman doesn't offer any easy answers.
And then, of course, you've got the Corinthian. He's Morpheus' own creation, this nightmare. But he's all about chaos, inflicting pain just because he can. Isn't he like the worst case scenario of what punishment could become?
Absolutely. The Corinthian, he's like this embodiment of punishment gone wrong, all about inflicting suffering, no deeper purpose. And the fact that Morpheus ultimately has to destroy his own creation, it's like he's acknowledging, I messed up. I unleashed this force of vengeance, and it backfired.
Wow, that's heavy. It's like taking responsibility for your actions, even the unintended consequences. So with all this talk of punishment, it makes me wonder about maybe the most crucial theme in the Sandman, forgiveness. It seems like even when it's really hard, forgiveness always leads to something better. What do you think?
Well, forgiveness is huge in the Sandman. It's this powerful force, always playing against that backdrop of punishment. And we see how it can transform everything. Individuals, relationships, even whole worlds.
Yeah.
You think about Morpheus seeking forgiveness from Nada. It's pivotal. He realizes the pain he caused, and he's trying to make things right. Shows he's grown, that he can admit he was wrong.
I mean, asking for forgiveness, especially when you've held so much power over someone, it's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Morpheus isn't just trying to clear his conscience, right?
Right.
He seems genuinely sorry, like he gets how much Nada suffered.
You've hit on something really important. Real forgiveness, it's not about letting the person who did wrong off easy.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging the harm, validating the victim's pain. It's about trying to heal things, make them whole again.
And the Sandman shows us that can be messy, complicated. Like take Lyta Hall, for example.
Oh, yes, Lyta Hall. She loses her husband in a horrific way. And a lot of her anger, her grief, it's directed at Morpheus. She blames him for her loss.
It's raw, her pain. And it makes you think about how forgiveness, it's a process, it's a journey, especially when you're dealing with that kind of loss.
Absolutely. And it's not about forgetting or saying what happened didn't matter. It's about finding a way to work through all that anger, all that resentment, for your own sake. Because in the Sandman, holding on to that negativity, it hurts you more than anyone. That's a profound insight, and it connects back to what we were discussing earlier about punishment. Maybe true justice isn't always about retribution, but about finding a way to restore balance, to heal the wounds, and to move forward in a way that acknowledges the harm done.
So the Sandman is kind of prompting us to ask, what does true justice look like in my life? Do we want revenge? Or do we want things to be made right again? Do we focus on punishing people or on understanding them? Man, these are big questions. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. But before we go deeper into this, let's shift gears a bit. I want to talk about something that's always fascinated me in the Sandman, and that's how it portrays hell.
You're right, scratch the surface is all we've done, because the Sandman doesn't just mess with your ideas about justice here on Earth, it reimagines hell itself.
Okay, now I'm really interested. I mean, when I think of hell, it's all fire and brimstone, demons, pitchforks, the whole deal.
Right, the classic image. But the Sandman, it takes a totally different approach. It's less about physical torture.
Oh.
It's about what's going on inside, the suffering of the mind, no hope, tons of regret, that feeling of being trapped by your own choices.
Ooh, that's way creepier than just physical pain.
Yeah.
Gets under your skin, makes you think about your own regrets.
Exactly. And think about when Morpheus goes to hell.
To get his helm back?
Yep, that's the one. He meets all these figures trapped there. They're condemned for what they did when they were alive. But the thing is, the series doesn't just say, these are bad people, they deserve this.
There's more to it.
Way more.
Ooh.
You see their struggles, what they regret, even moments where they could have been good.
So even in hell, it's complicated.
Exactly. It's not just this one-size-fits-all sentence, it's nuanced. You can even feel empathy for some of them.
Even though they did terrible things.
That's what's so interesting, and this is where some academics really get into it. They argue that how the Sandman portrays hell, it challenges this whole idea of eternal damnation. Like, maybe even the worst of us can change, can find some kind of redemption.
Whoa, this is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about hell. So it's not just punishment. Maybe it's also a place where you reflect, where you could actually change. Is Gaiman saying there's hope, even in hell?
That's one way to look at it, and it ties back to everything we've been talking about, justice and forgiveness. If even in hell change is possible, then maybe redemption is never totally out of reach, even for those who seem beyond hope.
It really makes you question how we do justice, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, are we too quick to label people as evil? To say they can't be redeemed? Maybe we need to be more open to the idea that people can change, can get second chances?
It's definitely something to think about, and it comes back to what the Sandman is all about. True justice requires empathy, understanding, seeing beyond just the surface of things.
Like how Morpheus learns to move past judging so harshly.
Exactly. Maybe we can learn from him. See the potential for growth and change, even in the darkest places.
Okay, wow. After that deep dive into hell, I need a minute. But seriously, it's amazing how the Sandman takes these huge, kind of scary topics, and it handles them with so much depth, so much nuance. And it's not just Morpheus, right?
Oh, absolutely not. He's not the only one wrestling with these questions.
Justice, punishment, all of it.
You see it all over the Sandman. Characters making mistakes, facing tough choices, dealing with the fallout from what they've done.
It's like this whole panorama of being human, playing out against this backdrop of dreams and nightmares, gods and monsters. And somehow it feels so relatable, even though it's this fantastical world.
That's the power of good storytelling, and throughout it all, the Sandman keeps coming back to the importance of choice.
Choice.
Even when things seem impossible, the characters have the power to choose what they do, to be compassionate, to try to forgive, or to keep those cycles of pain and revenge going.
That idea of choice, of actually having control, that really hits home for me. It's like, no matter how bad it gets, we always get to decide how we react. We can choose to be better, to break those bad cycles.
You got it. And you see how those choices play out in the series, how they affect not just one person, but everything around them. It's like everything's connected. What we do, even the little stuff, it matters.
So we've talked about Morpheus's journey, the complexities of hell, the power of forgiveness, but we keep circling back to this idea of choice, of the potential for change. It's like the Sandman is telling us that we aren't defined by our past mistakes. We can always choose a different path.
And that brings us back to forgiveness. Remember, it's not about letting someone off the hook.
Right. It's not about forgetting what happened or saying it was okay.
Exactly. It's about choosing to let go of the anger and resentment that keep you tied to the past. It's about setting yourself free to move forward.
Because if you hold on to that anger, that hurt, it eats away at you. It doesn't really punish the other person, does it?
You're right. Forgiveness, how the Sandman shows it, it's an act of self-care. It's about freeing yourself from that burden, making space for healing, for being kind to yourself and others.
And it's interesting, too, how the Sandman doesn't do those simple good versus evil stories. Even Lucifer, I mean, he's the ultimate fallen angel, but he's got his own reasons, his own complexities.
That's one of the things that makes this series so great, so timeless. It challenges you to think beyond those easy labels. Things are rarely black and white. There's always more to the story, more to each character than you see at first.
It makes you realize how easy it is to fall into that trap, to just say, this person's bad because you disagree with them.
But the Sandman, it pushes you to do the opposite, to try to understand different viewpoints, to see the gray areas.
Because in the end, we're all connected. What we do, the choices we make, they have these ripple effects. They impact us, the people around us, the whole world.
So if there's just one thing people take away from our deep dive into the Sandman today, what should it be? If I had to pick just one, true justice starts with empathy. It's about understanding, about compassion, about being willing to see more than just the surface. Recognizing that everyone's human, even those who've hurt us. And it's about choosing to forgive, not because you're weak, but because it's a powerful way to heal and to grow.
That's a great way to put it. And for anyone listening, next time you come up against some kind of injustice, big or small, ask yourself, what would real justice look like here? How can we create a world where forgiving each other actually leads to a better future?
And if you haven't already, dive into the Sandman yourself. You won't regret it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep your minds open to the wonder out there. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Justice, punishment. We even took a trip to the Sandman's version of hell. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. It is.
But I bet some folks are thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but what does this fantastical world have to do with me?
And that's the beauty of the Sandman, isn't it? It takes these epic stories, with gods and monsters and all that, but it uses them to explore things that are deeply human, truths that we all grapple with, and those insights. They're surprisingly relevant to our everyday lives.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me an example. How does this stuff in the Sandman actually translate to, like, my life?
Well, take Morpheus, for instance. He starts off as this rigid, almost tyrannical figure. But as he goes through these experiences, makes mistakes, encounters both the human and the divine, he changes, he softens.
Yeah, he starts to see that justice doesn't always have to be about punishment, that there's room for mercy, for second chances.
Exactly. And isn't that something we all struggle with? Holding on to anger, being quick to judge. Morpheus shows us that it's possible to grow, to become more understanding in how we approach not just justice, but all our interactions with others.
It reminds me of that saying, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. The Sandman really brings that to life. Everyone's on their own journey, even a powerful being like Morpheus.
And don't forget about forgiveness. That's a huge theme that runs through the entire series. And it's not about saying what someone did was okay.
Right. It's not about forgetting the wrong or condoning it.
It's about recognizing the harm that was done, but then making a choice to let go of the anger and resentment that are holding you back.
Because that anger, that resentment, it mostly hurts the person who's holding on to it.
Right.
It doesn't really punish the other person.
Exactly. Forgiveness, as the Sandman shows it, is a powerful act of self-care. It's about releasing yourself from that burden of the past.
Oh, you can heal, and move on.
Precisely. And it can create space for compassion, both for yourself and others.
I also think it's cool how the Sandman avoids those easy black and white good versus evil tropes. Even Lucifer, he's like the ultimate fallen angel, right?
Right.
But he's got his own motivations, his own complexities.
That's one of the reasons why the series is so powerful and so enduring. It challenges us to think beyond those simplistic labels. The world is rarely black and white. There's usually more to the story, more to each character than we might realize at first glance.
It makes you realize how easy it is to fall into that trap of, demonizing people we disagree with.
Yeah.
But the Sandman encourages us to do the opposite, to try and understand those different perspectives, to see the nuances and the gray areas.
Because ultimately, we're all connected. Our actions, our choices, they have these ripple effects. They impact not only us, but the people around us and even the world at large.
So if we were to take away just one key message from our deep dive into the Sandman today, what would it be?
That's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I'd say it's this. True justice starts with empathy. It's about understanding, about compassion. It's about being willing to look deeper, to see beyond the surface, and to recognize the humanity in everyone, even those who have done wrong. And yeah, it's about choosing forgiveness, not as a sign of weakness, but as a powerful step towards healing and growth.
Beautifully said. And to everyone listening, the next time you find yourself face to face with some kind of injustice, whether it's big or small, ask yourself, what would real justice look like in this situation? How can we work towards a world where forgiveness paves the way to a better future?
And if you haven't already, I highly recommend experiencing the Sandman for yourself. It's a journey you won't forget.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and stay curious.